Moments after today's highly charged House vote, President Trump called it the greatest witch hunt in American history. Let's bring in now White House reaction. Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham is with me today. Stephanie, good to have you on the program for the first time.
Thank you for having me.
So the ball has moved forward. I'm curious, in the White House, do you see this necessarily as progress in the impeachment probe, or is this still not quite due process for the President of the United States?
It was never due process for the President of the United States, and I've got to say, Nancy Pelosi has lost all control over there. That is clear. Phase one of this impeachment sham was all behind closed doors. Now they're moving to phase two, which is supposed to be public. I'm wondering, from the first phase, are we going to be able to see any of the transcripts or know what was said? Is any of the first phase going to come to light, or are we just starting phase two? And we don't know the rules yet for the White House. Are we going to get to even be involved? I don't think so. It's my understanding that we're not going to get to defend ourselves until it goes to the Judiciary Committee, and that's not how it works in America. In a court of law, you're innocent until proven guilty. Here, we're clearly guilty and have to prove our innocence, which won't be a problem because we already released a transcript showing the president did absolutely nothing wrong. I want to add one other thing. I keep seeing all these Dems on the floor talking about how this is for the good of the country. The president just authorized the kill of the founder and leader of ISIS. That's what's good for the country. This president's good for the country, and we're going to keep working, and they can continue to do their sham.
Stephanie, what about messaging at this point? I mean, the president has talked about moving from the process of things not being unfair, and especially now that this resolution has passed and Republicans, at least in some way, will get to subpoena, call witnesses. We'll have to see how open that process actually ends up being in the end. But now you move on to the substance against the president, the substance of the allegations. How does your messaging change?
Honestly, I don't think the messaging changes. We released that transcript weeks ago. Anybody who wants to look at the transcript will see that there was nothing done that was wrong. The Ukrainian government has said there was no pressure there. Aid money was released. The message is simple. It's what we've been saying. The president.
It's pretty impressive that the Democrats, almost completely, with the exception of these two Democrats, completely aligned. The Republicans, no defections at all, no time left. They're going to give a couple little Nancy Pelosi's in the chair, and that's significant in and of itself. But 232 in favor of this resolution to formally open up an impeachment inquiry of the president, and 196 opposed. Here's Nancy Pelosi.
Does any member wish to change a vote? On this vote, the yeas are 232. The nays are 196. The resolution is adopted without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
All right, there you have it. A very historic moment indeed. Dana, let's step back for a moment and take a look at this picture.
Yes. 232 years ago is when the Constitution was ratified and set in process, into law, this process to potentially happen. And the fact that the House has only considered this 4 times in those 232 years is a reminder of how incredibly historic this is. And the fact that Nancy Pelosi was in the chair, she doesn't usually preside, even though she is the Speaker of the House. And not just that, I was told she actually voted yes. And it is the tradition of the speakers of the House to actually not vote. They usually don't vote on legislation or on resolutions unless they want to make a point. She wanted to make a point, both symbolically and by sitting in the chair and with her vote, that she is all in on this. And that is a big shift. And we should remember that. She was the leader in reluctance. She was the leader in pushing back against the growing tide of the Democratic base, saying, we elected the majority in the House in order to take on this president. He's running roughshod over us. He is not he's not responding to subpoenas. He's not responding to witness requests, nothing. And then this Ukraine phone call came up and the whistleblower emerged. And everything changed and everything shifted because of that one moment, and even more so now that they've actually been able to do these depositions and talk to civil servants, not just political appointees, but people who were very concerned about it. And that is where this situation is now. But it is important to remember that it took a while to get here, even though the House Speaker was getting so much pressure to start this, because that is why so many Democratic rank and file members and voters think that they gave her the gavel in the first place in 2018.
The testimony of decorated war hero and top White House Ukraine advisor, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, seems to be doing major damage to the president's defense against impeachment in terms of both a quid pro quo and a possible cover-up. So let's start with a potential cover-up. Vindman's testimony is corroborating the claim in the whistleblower complaint that the White House locked down all records of the president's July 25th phone call with his Ukrainian counterpart. Citing people familiar with the testimony, the Washington Post reports this. Moments after President Trump ended his phone call with Ukraine's president on July 25th, an unsettled national security aide rushed to the office of White House lawyer John Eisenberg. Vindman, who told House investigators that he was alarmed after hearing President Trump pressure Ukrainian President Zelensky to investigate his political rivals, told Eisenberg that what the president did was wrong. And according to two people familiar with Vindman's account, Eisenberg then scribbled on a legal pad and, quote, proposed a step that other officials have said is at odds with long-standing White House protocol, moving a transcript of the call to a highly classified server and restricting access to it. Former Trump national security officials also tell the Post that Eisenberg had moved at least one other transcript of a Trump phone call to that classified server. NBC News has also learned from three sources that House impeachment investigators have asked Eisenberg and his deputy, Michael Ellis, to appear for a deposition on Monday. We do not know if either intends to appear or if the White House will seek to block their appearances. And the lieutenant colonel is also connecting other major dots in the probe. Two sources familiar with his testimony tell NBC News that Vindman told lawmakers that the White House meeting sought by the president of Ukraine, as well as the delivery of nearly $400 million in security and military aid, was contingent on Ukrainian officials carrying out multiple investigations sought by President Trump, including into the Bidens, Burisma, and the 2016 election. Sources say that Vindman drew a direct line between the deliverables for Ukraine and those investigations sought by President Trump.
So, you know, Steve Ratner, it's very simple. Vindman.
You and Mr. Trump don't want anyone who looks or talks differently than Caucasian Americans to be allowed into this country.
That's false.
I'm sorry. Please don't interrupt me, and I'd like the time to end
That's
it back.
defamatory.
Excuse me. There's nothing defamatory about it. And
The gentlelady controls the time, and the witness will get a chance to respond.
Thank you very much. You want to block all immigration and make life harder for immigrants, and you have demonstrated that you will pursue this heinous white supremacist ideology at all costs, even if it means making critically ill children your collateral damage in the process. And this goes to a comprehensive pattern of harm at USCIS under your leadership. In August, you announced the administration's new public charge rule, for example, which would deny legal status to immigrants who use social services. Mr. Cuccinelli, has USCIS done any analysis of how many children may stop receiving critical services due to fear of losing legal status under this rule? And I'd like you to answer that question, please.
After declaring that I am not a white supremacist, as you alluded,
you have had white supremacist
nor is the
policies.
president.
Okay.
Facts
matter.
Yes, they do. Yes,
Right.
they do. Truth
Which is why
matters.
I'm stating them here today.
Yes, no,
Please
you
answer the
certainly
question.
are not.
Please answer the question. How many
you're
children?
certainly cloaked in legislative
How many
privilege,
children
but that
may stop
means you
receiving,
can get away with
reclaiming
not
my
telling
time?
the truth.
Advocates have reported that immigrant families are terrified and that some have already dropped their children from essential programs like Medicaid and temporary assistance for needy families. When you announced this rule, you were asked whether it was consistent with the poem under the Statue of Liberty, which reads, quote, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free." And in response, you said the poem was only referring to people coming from Europe, and people coming from Europe would not be a public charge. Do you think our immigrants...
I did not say that.
That is what you said.
That is not what I said.
Do you think, certainly it was the implication.
No, it's what you would like to broadcast.
No,
but that is
I
absolutely
I heard you say it. I heard you defend it. And I want to know whether you think our immigration policies should treat immigrants from Europe differently from other immigrants from other parts of the world? And is the
No.
purpose of, you don't think so?
Correct.
Well, so then I'm not sure why you made that statement, because
Well, I
it certainly
didn't.
made it seem
You-
like
you
did. You
appended
said the
your
poem.
own piece
no,
to the end
You
of it.
said the poem was only referring to people coming from Europe. There's no doubt about that.
You added to the end of
and
the
the
statement.
implication was that people from Europe would not likely to be a public charge.
No, it was not.
Were you attempting to shut down the American dream for immigrants who may not be rich or white with this policy?
No.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.
That's right. Democrats up on Capitol Hill have now released the text of a resolution they say they're going to vote on Thursday that will authorize public hearings in the impeachment process up on Capitol Hill. So far, all those hearings that have taken place have been behind closed doors. Democrats keen to suggest this is not the beginning of a process. They say the process has already begun. So they're saying here that the committees are now being authorized, are directed to continue their ongoing investigations as part of the existing House of Representatives inquiry into whether sufficient grounds exist for the House of Representatives to exercise its constitutional power to impeach Donald John Trump, President of the United States of America. This document is going to set the rules of the road for those public hearings, which you can imagine will be highly watched across the country. One thing
This morning, for the first time, lawmakers will go on the record about their support for the impeachment inquiry. The House holding its first formal vote on a resolution that will open up the impeachment investigation that has been playing out behind closed doors, with Republicans and Democrats on 3 committees asking questions. Today's vote will allow the House Intel Committee to have public hearings.
This is something that is very solemn, that is something prayerful, and that we had to gather so much information to take us to this next step.
We are not here in some partisan exercise. We are here because the facts compel us to be here.
The measure would set up procedures for President Trump's lawyers to participate in hearings. Democrats holding majority in the House getting the final say on how it all shakes out. Republicans complaining they are being unfairly limited.
Trying to put a ribbon on a sham process doesn't make it any less of a sham.
It's not a fair process. It's not an open process. It's not a transparent process.
As that showdown unfolds on the House floor, the second current White House official will testify privately. Tim Morrison, another national security official, arriving on Capitol Hill this morning, hours after he resigned. Morrison brought into the investigation after William Taylor, the highest-ranking diplomat to Ukraine, mentioned him more than a dozen times to House investigators last week. Taylor said Morrison had a sinking feeling when President Trump seemingly urged Ukraine's president to investigate 2016 election interference, as well as Joe Biden and his son for corruption. And House Democrats are rapidly growing their witness list, now asking former National Security Advisor John Bolton to appear before congressional investigators. But Bolton's lawyer says he won't testify without a subpoena. Rachel Scott, ABC News, Capitol Hill.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.